to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning, you're watching and listening to GB News. This is Saturday morning with Esther and Philip.
And we have a fantastic show lined up for you today. We're talking about the UK by-elections which took place on Thursday, the ongoing rail strikes, whether the Royals should stay out of politics, and it's National Bingo Day on Monday. Yes, legs 11 to all of us, so get your dabber ready.
All of that plus much more after your latest headlines with Ray. Dabbers at the ready. Good morning. It's just past 10 a.m. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. Boris Johnson insists voters want to hear less about what he's calling things he stuffed up as he defended his leadership after a double by-election defeat. Speaking this morning in Rwanda, the Prime Minister said it's part of his job to face criticism as leader, but added that voters were fed up of hearing what he's alleged to have done wrong.
I have to, listen to all sorts of criticism. That's part of my job as leader. When things are tough, of course, people are going to rightly going to direct their frustration, their irritation at government and at me. I'm the leader of the government. I think to be absolutely clear, in the last few months, people in Tiverton, people in Wakefield just heard far too much about stuff they didn't want to be hearing about, and not enough about what we want to do to take the country forward.
Well, meanwhile, Labour's Shadow Secretary of State for Defence, John Healey, told GB News the public wants Mr Johnson to go.
I'd spent a lot of time campaigning in Wakefield, very struck by the level of disgust and discontent as people, I think, have seen through Boris Johnson and have lost confidence in the Conservatives doing the basic job of government now. And so it's our job in opposition until the next election to try and hold them to account and offer some of the plans that would make a difference, including on the cost of living, that we're just not seeing from the government itself.
To other news, and only a fifth of train services will run today due to another 24-hour strike by thousands of rail workers. Members of the RMT union have walked out for the third time this week in a dispute over jobs, pay and conditions. Many seaside resorts will have no services at all, and disruption will continue into Sunday. Steve Headley, former Assistant General Secretary at the RMT, told GB News rail workers deserve better.
I really hope that the RMT negotiators are going to hold out for a deal that the members deserve. I hope we're not going to have some rotten compromise. I think that the membership deserve and need a pay rise. And I think that they'll fight long and hard until they get the pay rise that they deserve.
Protests have taken place in the UK after the US Supreme Court ended the constitutional right to abortion in the United States. Events were held outside the American Embassy in London and the US Consulate in Edinburgh. Meanwhile, at Glastonbury, singer Billie Eilish described it as a dark day for women during her headline set. Sarah Elliott, spokesperson for Republicans Overseas UK, told GB News she supports the decision.
One of the reasons why this issue is so hotly contested in the United States is that it wasn't decided by the people through the democratic process of the legislatures. And now it will be. And it will go to the states where those states will be able to reflect the will and the views of the people who live there.
A shooting at a nightclub in Norway's capital is being investigated as an act of terrorism. 2 people are dead and 14 were seriously injured in the incident in Oslo. Norwegian police say one suspect, a 42-year-old Norwegian citizen of Iranian origin, is in custody. He was arrested with 2 weapons, including a fully automatic gun. The shooting took place just hours before Oslo was due to hold its annual Pride Parade. That's now been cancelled. Boris Johnson says the economic consequences of Russia's war could force Ukraine to agree a peace deal that's not in its interests. His comments come as the UK Ministry of Defence said that Russian armoured units continue to make creeping gains in Severodonetsk. Intelligence chiefs believe President Putin has replaced several generals since the start of the war, including the commander of airborne forces and the general of the army. UK house prices are continuing to rise, with the typical home now costing more than 7 times average earnings. Research by mortgage lender Halifax found that since the start of the pandemic, house prices have risen by 16.8%, whilst earnings have only risen by 2.7%. London is the most expensive place to buy a home, with an average property price of over £530,000. And Sir Paul McCartney will make history later when he becomes Glastonbury Festival's oldest solo headliner. The former Beatle will take to the stage exactly 1 week after celebrating his 80th birthday. His set is expected to attract an especially large crowd, with hits from his time in the Beatles, Wings and his solo work as well. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get back to Esther and Philip.
Welcome to Saturday Morning with Esther and Philip on GB News. Coming up on the show today.
Conservative Chairman Oliver Dowden has resigned following 2 by-election losses for the party to Labour and the Liberal Democrats. We discuss what the results mean for Boris Johnson.
Rail strikes have brought the country to a halt this week, and British Airways workers have voted to strike this summer. After COVID, have we become a nation that's work shy, or are these genuine pay grievances?
And we'll be joined live from Rwanda by former Labour MP Simon Danchuk to discuss visits to the country this week from Boris Johnson and Prince Charles.
And as ever, we want to hear from you this morning. So if you want to get involved with the conversation today, please email us at gbnews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews.
Before all of that, though, we're delighted to say that we're joined in the studio by the wonderful Kevin Woodford.
Good morning.
Kevin, what's been getting your juices flowing from the week's news and papers?
Plenty to go at, really, isn't there? But I think what did it for me, obviously, I'm not going to go into the railway strike, but I'm going to go on the edge of it, because I came in today and it was an easy drive in, to be quite honest with you. But what occurred to me was there was one particular section as I came in where most of the road in Paddington was given over to a cycle lane, OK? And there's a story in the paper which relates to that, because now Transport for London have now got the powers to be able to fine me, you or anybody else who's driving, who veers into that cycle lane. It used to be the police, but you've got to bear in mind, because it's Transport for London, there's cameras everywhere. So the chance of you being nicked for just literally veering into that lane has increased enormously. The fine for that is £160, generously reduced to £80 if you pay it very promptly. Now, what's my problem with that? I'll tell you what my problem with that is.
Go on, tell us what your problem with that, Kevin.
He's a grumpy old man, is it?
I've got to push back.
Well, I've got a couple of questions. So go on, you tell us, because I was looking at this thinking, well, really, is this about safety or is it just about revenue and raking in the money?
Interesting, right? Well, I've got a push bike, right? I've got a push bike, and I trundle around the lanes in my push bike, not a problem. But when I try not to get in anybody's way. But when I'm driving up a hill, steep hill, right, and there's a violent lime lycra'd individual, right, on his bike going up the hill at 0 miles an hour, because I don't want to injure him, I'm happy to sit behind him, quite happy to sit behind him. But the idea of being nicked 160 quid for veering into his lane, when if he veers into my lane, he doesn't pay a penny, he should be charged. So here's the thing that I want you to take back to government. Cyclists, if they veer out of their cycle lane, they should be fined 160 quid, but generously reduced to 80 quid if they pay it promptly. Secondly, they should pay road tax. Thirdly, they should pay a licence for the bike. Fourth, they should have to pass a cycling proficiency test, like we have to have a driving licence. Yeah? And with that, then I'd quite happily agree with what's happening. I mean, I want them to be safe, but at the same time, I don't want my life impinged upon the fact that I've got to make way for those cyclists.
You know the thing that worries me, Kevin, is that I agree with you more and more every week that you come on, and I don't know whether that should be worrying for you, or worrying for me, or worrying for both of us. But I think there's a lot in that, don't you? I mean, cyclists seem to be able to do anything they like. Right. I mean, in London,
we all need to get a little camera, don't we, on a hat or on our tie or wherever you're going to tie it. Yeah.
Walking down Marylebone High Street with a camera.
Because I have to say, as a pedestrian now, you take your life in your hand with those cyclists.
They go through red lights willy-nilly. They don't care. But if you do anything as a driver, exactly. 3 points on your licence in...
So are we in agreement with this?
I am.
And there is meant to be, I know some backbenchers are trying to bring a law through, and this is about aggressive behaviour of some cyclists, including riding on pavement, but basically total disregard for the pedestrian, because we are the lowest, aren't we, in the pecking order now, if you're walking anywhere.
Now,
It's getting worse. It's getting worse.
I've got a solution for these recalcitrant cyclists, Kevin.
Oh, I'm pleased to hear this,
and
Phil.
it's my story from the week. The Netflix new reality show for millennials, right? So Netflix said they were going to do a reality TV show. It was going to be something like Live Your Best Life and all this kind of stuff. And so they got all these glamorous people along there with all the outfits. They thought they were going to have a version of Love Island. And they get to the Lake District, all glammed up with all of the luggage, and they put all the luggage in one place and set fire to the lot of it.
No.
Literally set fire. Intentionally set fire to the lot of it. Set fire to the lot of it, and told them at that point that this was not Live Your Best Life or anything. This was going to be called Snowflake Mountain. And instead of being glamorous and dating or whatever they thought they were doing, actually there was an ex-military commander there who was going to basically put them through a boot camp. And it's the new reality TV show on Netflix.
So what are you doing with the cyclists? How does it link back to the cyclists? Are you sending them all over there and chucking their bikes on a sort of a pyre?
If they're not going to introduce these fines that Kevin wants, send them to Snowflake Mountain. Send them to Snowflake Mountain for a while. What do you think? Well, who would go on a reality TV show, though, without knowing what you're letting yourself in for?
Yeah, well, I wonder about that. I wonder whether they've actually signed up a contract for that, and whether they get there and that happens, and all of a sudden, can they just pull out of it? I'm sure I can see a lot of them, which have had the Botox done and the lips ready and all the rest of it.
I suppose in a much nicer way. Remember, don't forget your toothbrush with Chris Evans. You didn't sort of know what was happening there, but it was a lot more positive than that, wasn't it?
Well, yeah.
So mine's totally different again, and I'll seek your opinion on this, Kevin. And this is, as we're all getting told that we're all going more plant-based in our eating habits, this actually is how plant-based vegan sandwiches are disappearing off the shop shelves. So Tesco's vegan sandwich range has shrunk by 28% since 2019. Morrison's have entirely removed it, and it's because a survey of 420 sandwiches from 14 retail and food outlets found that the average plant-based sandwich was much more expensive than your regular, meat, ham, cheese, whatever it was, sandwiches. And so I'm thinking, why are they so expensive when they're plant-based? plant-based. And really, this sort of fascination with plant-based vegan stuff, is this another London bubble story? Are the people out and about in the country thinking, do you know what, I don't want chickpea and guacamole sandwich, I'd sooner just have, I don't know, ham and cheese? And that's what I'm wondering. But actually more alarming, I saw all sandwich fillers have gone up by 620% since 2019.
Is there a good reason why vegan sandwiches should be more expensive, or is it just because they think that it's richer people who eat all this vegan
That's
stuff?
interesting. That's very interesting. Yeah, that links on to my story, which I'll come to in a second, which is to do with Glastonbury. But I think that you made a point about the cyclist thing and TfL. You know, is it estimated? Is it to do with safety or is it to do with income generation? And I think it's to do with income generation, personally. Secondly, your point, Esther, I think the minute that you have, you've identified a group of individuals who aren't able to eat a particular product, vegetarians or vegans or whatever, that then gives the opportunity for a price increase because they have got no choice whatsoever.
So it's exploitation of either. So it's not sort of fads being fashionable. It could be somebody's, as you say, belief or allergies, and they're exploiting their inability to eat anything else.
Absolutely. I'm sure that...
Well, they're disappearing, those sandwiches off the shop shelves.
I'm not surprised. I've tried a couple of them, you know, occasionally when I couldn't find something else that...
When you'd won the pools or something.
Well, yeah, it was a bit like that, wasn't it? Yeah, just won the lottery.
I'll try a vegan sandwich.
I know. But, you know, we've got Glastonbury on at the moment, haven't we? Which, you know, and the point I made was that if you go back to the beginning of Glastonbury, which was 1970, where they sold 1,500 tickets, that's all they sold. And the main act in 1970 was T-Rex, who stood in for the Kinks because the Kinks couldn't make it. They thought probably wasn't big enough, they're not going to do it. And Mark Bolan was there in 1970. I wasn't, I hasten to add. But food-wise, what was offered in those days was a plastic mug of mung beans. You know, that's what they got, because most of the people that were going then were hippies, you know, and that's what they liked. They'd found the peculiar tobacco and they'd found the food that was different to everybody else. Remarkable how that has changed from 1970 now. If you look at what Glastonbury today, right, from 1,500 paying punters, there's now just under 200,000. There's 67,000 staff working there. From one stage, there's now 100 stages, right? There's 900 stalls selling a range of everything that you could imagine, you know, in terms of different food.
I have to tell you, which I thought was the best headline of the day. It's in the Daily Mail today. It's Robert Hardman's story, and he's talking about Glastonbury. And he says, this is more middle class than a Waitrose olive counter. That's what he's saying about Glastonbury. Who is there, the age of them, wwho's there, the type of people.
You know, the age is interesting because there was a story in, I think it's The Guardian today, and I just stumbled upon The Guardian, but there's a story in there about this 70-year-old guy, right, who's there, and he's sort of semi-naked, you know, and he's in amongst it all, and he's got his pillbox, right? But if you go back to 1976, in that pillbox, there'd be something a little bit wacky. The pillbox he's got now has got his heart tablets, right, and his diuretic tablets. Do you know what I mean?
Statins, whatever else.
And Paul McCartney's probably got his pillbox in his pocket, hasn't he? 80 years old, and he's still performing, for goodness sake. It's amazing.
Brilliant. Kevin, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Great to join us. Now, it's been a week of travel chaos across the UK, with rail strikes bringing the country to a halt, and RMT General Secretary Mick Lynch has warned the industrial action could escalate unless a settlement is reached.
It comes as workers for British Airways at Heathrow Airport have voted to strike during school summer holidays, meaning that more than 700 BA check-in and ground handling staff could walk out at the height of the summer season.
But it's not only travel being affected, it's doctors, teachers, barristers, post office workers, civil service workers.
So, has COVID fundamentally changed our work ethic, or are these genuine grievances over pay?
Joining us to discuss this is former Director General of the CBI, Lord Digby Jones. Digby, thank you very much indeed for joining us. So, let's see if you can answer Esther's question. Are these genuine pay grievances, or are basically people now trying to find any excuse to have days off work?
Well, good morning to you both, and good morning, everybody. I'm amazed in some ways about this, because I think your conclusion that it's a knock-on from the consequences of COVID is rightly made, but is only part of the story. So, good example would be that we have a politically motivated railway strike. The leaders have already said that they are there to cause mayhem and my words, not theirs, but bring this Tory government down, shades of Scargill. Didn't let the whole negotiation process go forward, but tapped into a seam of discontent. You see, for 2 years, the government paid a lot of people to do nothing. And they have got used to being paid for not a lot. And government provide. I don't know what this word government means. It's you, me, and everybody watching this paying tax. That's actually what government means for this purpose. So it's everybody else paying for this, not just in disruption and lost income, but actually in taxation, because it's government provide means taxpayer provides. So you have the situation with the railway where it's politically motivated. And if they're saying they're standing up for the workers, well, the workers are on the platform. The workers are the people who have been left there not being able to get to work. But we have this idea that government provides. Secondly, for some reason, government, whatever that may mean, is responsible in the eyes of most people for inflation. Well, they're not. The actual real consequences, if you print money, as the Bank of England has since 2009, called quantitative easing, look at the Weimar Republic in the 1930s in Germany, you will get rampant inflation. And it's just amazing it's taken so long. And I don't think it was government's responsibility for Putin invading Ukraine and really causing a massive problem with oil and other energy prices. Where government are to blame is that in their budgetary exercise, they could have done so much more at the bottom end to help so many people at the bottom end who have real hardship out of the rise in inflation. Instead of which, they've left a lot of that out there. And if they think they're going to delay it to help win an election, they'll have lost the dressing room before that starts. If you move it on and you move away from politically motivated strikes, I would ask all public sector workers who are thinking of striking, just beware losing public sympathy, because strikes never work if you lose public sympathy. And the one word I haven't heard in all of this, and I exclude barristers from this, I exclude British Airways workers from this, but the public sector doing this, the one word I haven't heard is pensions. If you took an inflation-proofed, index-linked public sector pension and you said to the private sector, who actually generate the profits that pay the tax that pay for these things, and if you said to them, right, you need a pot of money to pay the equivalent to the pension that public sector worker's getting, it would be enormous. It would be huge. Instead of which, we never, ever hear of it.
Digby, do you not think the RMT say, well, look, you know, inflation's running at 9%, we're asking for a 7% pay rise. Many people in the country might say, well, that doesn't sound particularly unreasonable that your pay tries to keep up with the cost of living. What would you say? What would you say to that?
There's two things. The one is that if you let one group of workers go with 7%, you'll let every group of workers go from 7%. I remember Ford at Dagenham in 1978. I know you two weren't even born, but I remember then that they actually settled at 20-something%, and they called it productivity enhancing simply if they turned up to work. It set the benchmark. Everybody piled in at 20-odd%, and you had even more rampant inflation. So that's the one worry with it. And the other worry of it is...
Digby, junior doctors are wanting to come in at 22%. Teachers are wanting to come in at 12%. We've now got barristers out. We've got post office workers out. They're all piling in. What are the government to do?
Well, stand firm. Absolutely stand firm. Because if they don't, they'll never cope with dealing with inflation. And we are a society that have got used to low inflation. We haven't had double-digit inflation for, 20 years? Easy, probably more. And on that bay, probably 30 years. And if we are a society that aren't used to that, you wait till you're experiencing a high inflation economy And then you get everything out of kilter. And especially, of course, you get people on fixed pensions. I have in mind particularly the old poor. They are on fixed pensions called a retirement pension. And if inflation ravages that, then these selfish people are actually hurting the more vulnerable in society. And all I would say is it's not pleasant. It's not pleasant. Every single person suffers from inflation. And my sympathies go with young doctors. My sympathies go with some teachers. Certainly it goes with barristers, because legal aid barristers, I know everybody thinks lawyers spend their lives on the golf course and earn fortunes. Believe me, a taxi rank legal aid barrister who takes the next case, that's the taxi rank idea, takes the next case and makes sure that every single person accused of anything in this country is entitled to free legal advice if they can't afford it. That's a wonderful thing for a nation to have.
Jones.
But those barristers are very badly paid. My sympathy is with them. But if you give in on one, you have to give in on the lot, and the damage to the economy would be enormous.
So, Digby Jones, the message is don't give in and government to stand firm. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. Thank you very much. Now, coming up after the break, we are discussing the UK by-elections, which saw Labour and the Lib Dems gaining seats.
And of course, we want to hear from you this morning, so to get involved in the conversation, email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at GBNews.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV,
on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
with honest and civilised conversation. We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to the show. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has said he will keep fighting after the Lib Dems overturned a huge majority in Tiverton and Honiton and Labour retook the seat of Wakefield in 2 by-election losses.
Following the results, Conservative Chairman Oliver Dowden resigned from his post, saying Tory supporters were distressed and disappointed.
To discuss the results further, we're joined by Chief Political Commentator for The Independent, John Rentoul. John, thank you very much for joining us. What should we read into these by-election results for each of the main parties?
Well, nothing into the Tiverton and Honiton by-election. That just proves that the Lib Dems are back as a protest vehicle, and they can even win by-elections in Leave voting seats like Tiverton and North Shropshire, where they actually did even better. The Wakefield by-election much more significant because that's obviously the main opposition party, and that suggests that Labour is doing reasonably well, but not necessarily well enough to win the next election. But it'll be enough to frighten a lot of Tory MPs, I suspect, and put pressure on Boris Johnson to go. And I do think that Oliver Dowden's resignation is more significant than both of those by-elections put together.
And so, what do you make? What do you think the impact of Oliver Dowden's resignation, and obviously there's been Michael Howard's comments in the papers about, you know, that Boris Johnson should consider his position, as should people in the cabinet. What do you think the fallout from all of that will be, given that we've had a vote of confidence in the Prime Minister and he won it?
Yeah, you've only just had a vote of confidence, only 3 weeks ago, and already Tory MPs are talking about changing the rules to allow a new vote. I mean, I don't think that's going to happen for several months. As you know, there's going to be elections to the executive of the 1922 committee on the 13th of July. That'll be very interesting to see the sort of people who get elected. Whether they're, I mean, I doubt if they're going to be people who have Boris Johnson's long-term interests at heart. And so I think. The Prime Minister's time in office is coming to an end. He can survive for quite a long time. I mean, Prime Ministers certainly can. It's very difficult to get rid of them. But it's very difficult to see the party going into the next general election led by Boris Johnson.
Well, there are painful headlines for him on the front page of pretty much every paper today. The Times, PM faces new Tory threat. The Telegraph, Tory rebels plot to unseat PM. The Mirror, go now. But I was reading an interesting article by Jack Straw, and he was really comparing it to the final days of Brown. And he talked about the Crewe and Nantwich by-election that Labour lost to the Tories, and the Glasgow East, which they lost to the SNP. And he said that he was doing the job of Oliver Dowden, having to go out and explain what was going on. And he wondered if anybody believed him. Did the public believe these politicians who say, oh, nothing to look at here, Gov, it's all fine? But he said it was coming to an end.
Yeah, a very good article by Jack Straw, and there are certainly parallels with the end days of Gordon Brown in all this. It's a real test of whether the Conservative Party's boast to be the most ruthless democratic party in the Western world is really true. I think, given how badly Boris Johnson did in that vote of confidence just 3 weeks ago, I think the next time they come for him, they'll get him.
Are you impressed with how he is managing to hold on? Do you think there is a way he could hold on? Because none of us have a crystal ball.
No, well, you've got to admire his resilience and his interview this morning saying, I'm not going to change. If you're expecting a psychological transformation, then that's not going to happen, which is what his critics have been saying. No change, no chance. That was Jeremy Hunt's slogan, which is very interesting. You've got to admire his resilience, but it's very difficult to see where he gets the reserves of support from in the parliamentary party, let alone the party in the country.
The bit I don't understand in all this, John, is that we like you say, we had the vote of no confidence in the Prime Minister a few weeks ago. I'm not aware of any Conservative MP who thought we would actually win in Wakefield or thought we would win in Tiverton and Honiton. So I don't quite understand why losing those two by-elections now leads to another sort of spate of all this, because we'd all, I think, priced that into the decisions that we made 3 weeks ago. So I find that quite difficult to grasp. So, look, do you think that Boris Johnson will fight the next election as leader of the Conservative Party? And for that matter, do you think Keir Starmer will fight the next election as leader of the Labour Party?
Well, yes. No, I think Keir Starmer is in a much safer position than Boris Johnson. Assuming that Keir Starmer doesn't get fined by the Durham police, in which case, that's off. But I don't think he would have made that promise to stand down if he thought that was likely. But no, I don't think Boris Johnson can carry on. And I think you're right. I thought that these by-elections were a write-off, and therefore that when the Conservatives lost them, it wouldn't change views. But there's always a difference between knowing something in advance bad is going to happen and when it actually happens. It still has a psychological effect. I mean, I've spoken to Conservative MPs who say that they supported the Prime Minister in the vote of confidence, but they wouldn't vote for him in another one. And they knew those by-elections were going to happen and they were going to be lost. It was the same thing with the Sue Gray report. I thought, everybody knew roughly what was in it, but when it was published, it still had an astonishing effect on attitudes in the country and in the party.
So I just want you, finally, John, I just want your predictions as we stand today. So based on these by-election results, who's going to win the Tiverton and Honiton seat at the next general election? Who's going to win the Wakefield seat at the next election? And who's going to win the general election overall? As things stand today, what's your prediction on those?
Just putting you on the spot, John.
Fair questions, Philip. I think the Tories will win back Tiverton and Honiton. Labour will hold Wakefield, and I think the next election will be a hung parliament. There you
go. We can tell you're not a politician, John, because you answered those questions directly, which we wouldn't expect anything less of you. Thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning.
Thanks, John. Now, Rwanda has once again been at the top of the news cycles as the Prince of Wales and Duchess of Cornwall jetted off on behalf of the Queen for a Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Kigali.
Boris Johnson also arrived in the country to meet with President Paul Kagame and attended a potentially awkward meeting with the Prince of Wales yesterday. Prince Charles is alleged to be appalled by the Prime Minister's plan to fly migrants to Rwanda.
Well, we're now joined by former Labour MP Simon Danchuk, who joins us from Rwanda. So, Simon, friend of the show now, what are you doing in Rwanda?
Well, I've also been attending the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, a business forum, which is a side meeting that takes place alongside CHOGM, as it's known. And I've been there in Kigali for the last week, looking at business opportunities, but also really just immersing myself in the issues around the Commonwealth and what it means for the United Kingdom, really.
So, Simon, we get a picture in the newspapers as to what's actually been going on. But as an insider, what is the big discussion point? We've seen about Baroness Scotland and trying to be ousted as Secretary General and clinging on to that. Has that been, as it is in the papers, the big thing, or has there been other more mundane things that have been leading the agenda there?
Well, perhaps more mundane, but also more important. There's been lots of discussion about climate change, quite rightly, issues around the digital divide that we get right across the nations that make up the Commonwealth. That's crucially important. Investment, creating greater equality, reducing poverty. They're many of the issues that CHOGM have been discussing, and that's really important. The other issue is around trade and investment. We've come out of the European Union. The Commonwealth offers a great opportunity for the United Kingdom post-Brexit, and it's something that we can build upon because this is a group of nations. It covers a third of the population of the world, so it's crucially important, and it really does unite us across the world. The United Kingdom being at the forefront of the Commonwealth, and so there's a great opportunity to build on the chance to do trade and investment right across the 54 nations that make up the Commonwealth.
And I think that's what a lot of our viewers will be interested in. What is going to happen with these trade agreements post-Brexit? What will it mean for us, for our standard of living, cost of living? So, as you being there, doing these business meetings, are you seeing positive outcomes? Does the future look positive?
It really does. We often forget that the United Kingdom is seen very positively right across the world, and we underestimate that back in the UK. And I think some people, particularly on the left, play down the significance that the United Kingdom has across the globe, and the Commonwealth's a real opportunity to extend our popularity, I would even call it, across the globe, and to really build on it in terms of trade. And you come to CHOGM, and who you have there, the people it attracts, all the top executives, whether it's from Google, from Mars Confectionery, from many other businesses throughout the world, and they come directly to CHOGM because of who is attending, not least Boris Johnson, many other dignitaries, presidents from various nations are coming to this meeting. So it attracts business, and it's a real opportunity to do trade and to do business and get investment into the UK. It's a great opportunity for us, actually, to showcase ourselves. As well as Rwanda in this instance, showcasing themselves.
Just quickly, Simon, if you can, we can't let you go without asking what's been the talk around the government's policy of flying refugees to Rwanda. Has that been a big topic of conversation, and what have people made of it there?
Well, the big topic has been how great a country Rwanda is. And, you know, the fact that, well, if you were an illegal immigrant going into the UK, you might not be too bothered about being sent to Rwanda. It's an absolutely, as you can see, beautiful country.
Simon, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and keep enjoying the sunshine.
I'll try my best.
Coming up after the break, we're talking about National Bingo Day, which is being celebrated up and down the country this Monday.
And we want to hear from you this morning. So if you want to get involved, you know how to do it. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk or tweet us at gbnews.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation. We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you. And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. Monday, the 27th of June, is National Bingo Day. And to mark the special occasion, operators from both retail and online will be coming together to celebrate the great game that means so much to so many.
In anticipation for the big day, there have been a host of exclusive games, events, activities and promotions taking place in clubs throughout the country. But what makes bingo so magical? Joining us now to discuss this, we're delighted to say, is the Director of Public Affairs at the Rank Group, David Williams. So, David, we've all been brought up with Legs 11 and two fat ladies and all that kind of stuff. What is it that makes bingo so enduringly popular?
Yeah, good morning, guests. Good morning, Philip. I think it does have an enduring appeal. You're absolutely right. And actually, if you go into bingo clubs up and down the land, what is extraordinary is the sort of range of generations. You have people there with their mums and with their grandmothers, all playing together. I think it makes people feel comfortable. It's for many people, it is their social lifeline. We discovered during the pandemic, when our clubs were closed, so many of our customers missed it because it was their chance once a week or twice a week to get out of the house, go and see their friends, have a bite to eat and a cup of tea, and play some bingo. The thrill of winning, or even getting close to winning, is as real as it was 500 years ago when bingo was invented. Did you know that when you are one number away from winning bingo, your heart beats faster than if you're on the big one at Blackpool? It is exciting, and there's a lot to like. And of course, bingo, yes, it's traditional. Yes, it's part and parcel of sort of communities, but also a lot of operators are reinventing it and trying to bring it into the modern day.
Now, I've in my past, I've actually read out bingo numbers occasionally at places, and I did always used to make sure I paused after reading out a few to say, "Is anybody sweating?" Because they all used to love that. You know, maybe that's because the heart was beating so much faster. I don't know. But look,
they still talk about it, Philip. They still talk about your bingo.
Is it the sort of stereotype of bingo is that it's full of sort of elderly people and it's full of women? Is that true, or is that stereotype wrong?
Look, I think that's a little bit outdated. It is. We do over-index for women who play. We get more women than men in our clubs. I don't think that's a huge surprise. But a third of all people who play bingo in clubs are aged between 25 and 35. So it does have an appeal to younger people. Yes, the core traditional bingo game does appeal to sort of older people, but there's a sort of new wave of younger demographic coming in. And actually, if you go and look at some of these clubs, we've got a Mecca Bingo club that we've just reopened in Luton. If you were to go in, you would think it's one of the most fabulous evenings of entertainment. It's not just people sitting there quietly shushing you up because you're rustling your crisp packet, which is, of course, the sort of stereotype.
David, I've got to interrupt you there, because I did go for a cracking night out at the local bingo. It was on the Hackney Road. It was a little while ago, and I thought, a sedate evening. Who was coming in? The elderly ladies, this, that, the other. Can I tell you, those women are not to be messed with. There was a chap there randomly shouting out line and house. The first time they did it, they thought it was a mistake and they were prepared to give him the benefit of the doubt, and they were all slightly pleased when he didn't have a line. When he'd done it 3 times, they were wanting his guts for garters, and they got him arrested because he was interfering with their game. So you don't mess with those bingo playing grannies, trust me.
Well, no, you're quite right. You can afford a yellow card, but if you do it again, you will get a red card. And but I think the point is, I think for people who think, look, it's one size fits all, bingo across over 300 bingo clubs, many of them are different. And actually, at different times of the week, yes, you'll have your core traditional bingo that appeals to
I think I was there for Friday night, David. I think we were there Friday night, peak activity. I had 1 card. These ladies had about 40 cards, dabbers at the ready, checking my numbers on their own. Incredible.
It is quite a sight to see, isn't it? The skills that these people actually can do in checking multiple bingo cards is something to behold. I think it's fabulous.
Well, now, as I alluded to at the start, David, I want to know, why has bingo gone politically correct? Because we all remember, 2 fat ladies, 2 little ducks, 5 and 9, the
little wolf whistle.
All that, wolf whistling after legs 11, all this. Now you go to bingo, they don't do any of that. So where's all the theatre gone? Why can't we have all that stuff back again?
Absolute nonsense. You've spent far too long in Portcullis House of late, and I need to get you out to some bingo clubs, because actually the whole point about bingo clubs is if that is what the local community wants, that's what they get. So if you want that traditional, not retro, but some of that jargon, you can have it. Of course, in some of the other clubs, that doesn't appeal to some of the newer ones. But I'm going to give you, right, can I give you 2 guys a bit of a test? You were showing off there, Philip, about your knowledge of bingo numbers. So you know that 59 is the Brighton line. OK, so let's give you a little bit of a test here. OK, what is the jargon for 39?
39? Is it something like 39 steps? Is it something to do with 39?
Is it the steps?
Step.
Oh, we see he's good.
OK, I'll give you the lingo and you give me the number. Life begins.
40.
Correct. OK.
What are the 2
Party
ducks?
house.
22?
Huh?
Party house. Party house.
Party house?
10. Number 10.
That's Boris's den.
No, it's now. It's a new one. It's now, see.
Party house, is it?
I was there with you, David. He's retro. I'm current.
He's getting controversial as well. David Williams, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and I hope you'll be getting your dabber out on Monday to join in with all the fun.
Because we will be.
I've always got my dabber out, guys.
Fantastic.
Your reputation goes before you, I've got to say. But David, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
For sharing that news about his dabber.
Exactly, absolutely. But, I do like a bit of Legs 11 and, what happened.
What drew me to you, Bill?
What happened to that? Now, this week, the Institute of Economic Affairs published a new study looking at what COVID lockdowns told us about alcohol policy.
The author of the study, Chris Snowdon, said the first year of the pandemic provided a natural experiment in which the impact of dramatic changes in the availability and marketing of alcohol can be examined.
Well, Chris joins us now to discuss what he found. So, Chris, what was the conclusion? Am I right in thinking that your conclusion is that there was no pubs open, there wasn't much advertising going on, and yet it didn't have any impact on alcohol-related harm? Is that the long and short of it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the lockdown wasn't designed to reduce alcohol-related harm, but by the logic of public health, if you have the amount of alcohol advertising half, which is what happened, and if the number of outlets that are selling alcohol falls by 2/3, which is what happened, the entire hospitality industry obviously closed for months and months, you would expect to see a drop in alcohol consumption that would lead to a drop in alcohol-related harm. And in 2020, we did see a small drop in consumption of about 4 or 5%, but we saw a massive spike in alcohol-related harm, with alcohol-related deaths going up by 19% in the UK, really an unprecedented amount. So, as I say, lockdowns weren't supposed to test this, but it did provide a natural experiment by which we could test some of the more extreme policies from these people.
Now, I can understand that, people who are already sort of heavy drinkers, the lockdowns may not have stopped their drinking. In fact, it might have exacerbated it. I can see that. But perhaps the people who urge these restrictions upon us, they might say, well, what it did do, though, is it stopped people getting into alcohol in the first place. It stopped that sort of gateway from being non-alcoholic to becoming an alcoholic. Is there any evidence that the lockdown stopped the sort of gateway to alcohol for people?
No, I mean, the decline in alcohol consumption seemed to have come about because people who were not drinking particularly heavily cut down or they stopped. You may know people yourself who only drink when they go out to a pub, and the pubs were closed, so they just didn't drink anything at all. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have people who were already drinking very heavily, they drank even more, and some of them died as a direct result of that.
I, Chris, read this report and I found it absolutely fascinating. Who would have thought that COVID lockdown would have given people like you this sort of perfect experiment, particularly theories that people like the World Health Authority have used, that if you stop availability, advertising, and make things less affordable, it will stop drinkers, and not just drinking across the board and also heavy drinking. That didn't happen at all. So what are the key determinants? What did you find does push people into drinking alcohol, and how do we protect those most vulnerable to alcohol abuse?
Well, the spike in deaths have taken place for two reasons. One is simply just the boredom and the stress of lockdown and the pandemic and all that, all people who were already drinking. But also, the lockdown led to the NHS being completely taken over, really, by COVID-19 treatment. And so people who were problem drinkers couldn't get that face-to-face support that they need. But I think that reinforces my broader point, which is if you want to tackle alcohol-related harm, you need to deal with individuals who are suffering and need help. You don't try and treat the entire population. You don't try and get the entire population to drink a bit less. You can do that by getting moderate drinkers to become light drinkers and light drinkers to become teetotalers, but there's no public health benefit to it. And all you're doing is ignoring the real problem, which is fortunately a fairly small minority of people who at any one time are drinking a life-threatening amount. And they're overlooked really by public health people these days because all the focus is on things like minimum pricing, taxes, licensing restrictions, advertising. And we know that the basic theory behind all this, which is that if you reduce alcohol consumption, you will reduce alcohol-related harm, is just not true, because we've seen a big fall of alcohol-related over the last 20 years, and we haven't seen any reduction in alcohol-related deaths. So this theory, which probably seems a bit weird to a lot of you viewers anyway, but trust me, it is taken very seriously by the likes of the World Health Organization, has been tested repeatedly and shown not to be true.
Chris Snowdon of the Institute of Economic Affairs, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Now, this week, Prince William said that racism remains an all-too-familiar experience for black people in Britain.
The Duke of Cambridge made the comments during a speech for the National Windrush Monument unveiling at Waterloo Station, during which he also spoke about his recent tour to the Caribbean was a learning curve.
Now, the royal family are, as a rule, expected to stay out of politics and refrain from giving their personal opinion on certain topics. But with Prince Charles allegedly branding the government's Rwanda policy as appalling, and Prince Harry and Meghan Markle strain into US politics, we're wondering if the worlds of royalty and politics are getting too close.
Joining us to discuss this is royal commentator Michael Cole. So, for me, should the royals and royalty and the royal family stay out of politics altogether?
Well, you can bet that Prince William's speech, which was well reported, was cleared with number 10 and the Home Office before he made it. It was the sort of thing that one expects from the heir presumptive to say on occasions like this. And of course, it's been echoed by his father in Rwanda, who made his speech yesterday, deploring and saying how sad it made him, the history of slavery. But we have to remember that this country in 1807 was the first to ban the slave trade, and then it was eradicated in what was then the British Empire in 1837. And that was 30 years almost before America, after a very wicked civil war, greatest war it is ever engaged in, banned slavery once and for all in the United States. So these are obviously good things to say, but I don't think they're essentially political. I think it's accepted. What they're saying is not controversial anywhere in the civilized world.
Michael, I noticed at the Platinum Jubilee concert, Prince William dedicated some of his speech not just to talking about what a wonderful servant the Queen had been, but also about climate change. And again, I just wondered, is this a concerted effort by the royal family to try and appeal more to young people, or do they just think genuinely that these are topics that they should be free to comment about?
Well, you two know above everybody that every question at the end of the day is political, and after it being political, it's theological. So there's almost no topic that they can talk about that doesn't have a political edge to it. So they look for topics which are generally the bien-pensant, the ordinary people think that this is the right thing. And when Prince William was voicing those thoughts, I'm sure that they're echoed in many people's thoughts. I mean, all of us, even people at my advanced age, we worry about what the world our grandchildren are going to inherit. So it's quite right for him to talk about that. These are issues that he can talk about, and he will give some more. They're not party political issues in any sense. There is a broad cross-section.
And if that is the case, Michael, I sometimes feel that they're lost. They don't actually know what their purpose is, and they're bouncing from one bandwagon to the next. Would it not be better if they had, like the Queen, like absolute hobbies, things they've pursued all their life that they enjoy doing, her with the horses, her with the Commonwealth, whatever it is? Would they not be better just to follow something they truly believe in, rather than just talking for talking's sake?
Well, I think it's an extremely good point, but they do have private activities which they pursue, and also charitable activities which they're heavily engaged in. You know, the Queen reigns, she doesn't rule. That's the advantage of a constitutional monarchy, which we enjoy in this country. But the monarch has tremendous influence. I mean, you and I don't have half an hour with the Prime Minister every Tuesday evening to chat over what's been going on. An audience that can go on for an hour and a half if there's particularly tricky issues at stake. And over the years, of course, Her Majesty the Queen, having had 13 prime ministers, met 14 American presidents and read the red boxes, all the briefings from MI5, MI6 and GCHQ. She's extraordinarily well informed, and Prince Charles will be in due course. And it's a wise prime minister who actually listens to the monarch and takes their point of view. And I'm told that the Queen only has to say, are you sure this is entirely wise to make a prime minister think again about a controversial policy?
Michael Cole, thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning. And thank you for watching the first hour of Saturday Morning with Esther and Philip.
Let us know which part of the hour you've enjoyed the most. Don't forget to send us your views, gbviews@GBNews, or you can tweet us at GBNews.
Good morning, I'm Helen Roberts with your weather update, and this weekend is looking rather changeable, certainly in comparison with some recent days over the past week or so, and it's all thanks to this area of low pressure, very slow moving, and it's with us right the way through the course of this weekend. Initially introducing this cold front, which will actually bring some better nights if you've been struggling to sleep with the humidity over recent nights, feeling a little bit cooler and fresher than it has done. So for Saturday, we start on quite a bright note, but quickly these rash of showers developing, particularly across western parts of the country. Some of those will be heavy, maybe even the odd rumble of thunder. The best chance of seeing drier and brighter weather throughout the day is across East Anglia and the southeast of England. And this is also where we'll tend to get the higher temperatures into the low 20s. So feeling quite pleasant in the sunshine. But it is looking changeable, and there's yet more cloud and rain swinging in from the west through the course of tonight and into the start of Sunday. This will be a band of slightly more persistent rain as we head into the early hours of Sunday morning. As I mentioned, feeling a little bit fresher than it has done over some recent nights, but still not cool by any stretch. So we start Sunday again with some bright spells, particularly across the eastern side of the UK, but quite a lot of cloud already piling up across western areas, and further showers or perhaps longer spells of rain. And again, they could be heavy and possibly thundery at times. Still, the best chance of drier and brighter conditions is across the southeast corner of the UK. And again, temperatures here just about climbing into the low 20s, given that sunshine. And there's really no significant change as we head into the early part of next week, certainly staying on the changeable side with further showers, which will be heavy at times, but occasional bright or sunny spells too.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation. We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Good morning and welcome back to Saturday Morning with Esther and Philip. Coming up on this hour of the show,
we're discussing a campaign shedding light on abuse faced by those in customer-facing jobs.
We're also looking at copyright law and how it applies to tattoos.
And we're joined by rock legend, former lead guitarist for John Bon Jovi, Richie Sambora. That, plus much more after the latest news headlines with Ray.
Good morning. It's coming up to 2 minutes past 11. I'm Ray Addison in the GB newsroom. Boris Johnson insists voters want to hear less about what he's calling things he stuffed up as he defends his leadership after a double by-election defeat. Speaking from the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Rwanda this morning, the Prime Minister said it's part of his job to face criticism as leader, but added that voters were fed up of hearing what he's alleged to have done wrong.
I have to, listen to all sorts of criticism. That's part of my job as leader. When things are tough, of course, people are going to rightly going to direct their frustration, their irritation at government and at me. I'm the leader of the government. I think to be absolutely clear, in the last few months, people in Tiverton, people in Wakefield just heard far too much about stuff they didn't want to be hearing about, and not enough about what we want to do to take the country forward.
Meanwhile, Labour's Shadow Secretary of State for Defence, John Healey, told GB News the public want Mr Johnson to go.
I'd spent a lot of time campaigning in Wakefield, very struck by the level of disgust and discontent as people, I think, have seen through Boris Johnson and have lost confidence in the Conservatives doing the basic job of government now. And so it's our job in opposition until the next election to try and hold them to account and offer some of the plans that would make a difference, including on the cost of living, that we're just not seeing from the government itself.
The RMT union is refusing to rule out further strike action this year as a third day of walkouts disrupts transport across the country. Only a fifth of train services are running today as thousands of rail workers protest over jobs, pay and conditions. Many seaside resorts have no services at all and disruption is expected to continue into Sunday. RMT boss Mick Lynch says rail workers would get a better deal if the government understood the work they do.
We're not going to name dates immediately, and we're going to continue working constructively with the companies to try and get a deal. But that is a really steep challenge at the moment, and it hurts our people because they've lost their wages. We don't want that to happen. So if Grant Shapps wants to be constructive, that's what he can do. It's up to him what his disposition is. I'll work with Grant Shapps or anyone else that's got something constructive to say in this dispute.
Protests have taken place here in the UK after the US Supreme Court ended the constitutional right to abortion in the United States. Events were held outside the American Embassy in London and the US Consulate in Edinburgh. Meanwhile, at Glastonbury, singer Billie Eilish described it as a dark day for women during her headline set. Sarah Elliott, spokesperson for Republicans Overseas UK, told GB News she supports the decision.
One of the reasons why this issue is so hotly contested in the United States is that it wasn't decided by the people through the democratic process of the legislatures. And now it will be. And it will go to the states where those states will be able to reflect the will and the views of the people who live there.
A shooting at a nightclub in Norway's capital is being investigated as an act of terrorism. 2 people are dead and 14 seriously injured in the incident in Oslo. Police say one suspect, a 42-year-old Norwegian citizen of Iranian origin, is in custody. He was arrested with 2 weapons, including a fully automatic gun. The shooting took place just hours before Oslo was due to hold its annual Pride Parade. That's now been cancelled. Boris Johnson says the economic consequences of Russia's war could force Ukraine to agree a peace deal that's not in its best interests. His comments come as the UK Ministry of Defence said that Russian armoured units continue to make creeping gains in Severodonetsk. Intelligence chiefs believe that President Putin has replaced several generals since the start of the war, including the commander of airborne forces and the commander of the army. Sir Paul McCartney will make history later when he becomes Glastonbury Festival's oldest solo headliner. The former Beatle will take to the stage exactly 1 week after celebrating his 80th birthday. His set is expected to attract a especially large crowd with hits from his time in the Beatles, the Wings and solo work too. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now let's get back to Esther and Philip.
Welcome back to Saturday Morning with Esther and Phil. We have a fantastic lineup on this hour for you. Coming up,
we're joined by a campaigner who is shedding light on the awful abuse faced by some of those in customer-facing jobs.
We're talking about the Supreme Court ruling yesterday that removed American women's constitutional right to abortion.
and we're discussing Glastonbury Festival, which celebrates its 50th anniversary this weekend, and we're joined by former Bon Jovi lead guitarist Richie Sambora.
And loads of you have been getting in touch already, but we want more. So if you want to get involved and join in the conversation, email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk, or you can tweet us at gbnews.
Before all of that, though, lots of you have been getting in touch. Barnes says, in my opinion, these RMT strikes have nothing to do with pay. It has everything to do with a grassroots union movement to bring down this Tory government. They also conveniently forget this government subsidised them to the tune of £16 billion with furlough to protect their jobs. Disgraceful behaviour.
Pamela says, what a lot of sense Sir Digby Jones spoke about not giving in to strikes. Why isn't he in government?
And Digby Jones has certainly gone down well with many viewers. Sylvia says, please let's have more of Digby Jones on GB News. He has spoken more common sense in a few minutes than most guests on other channels.
And Margaret says, getting rid of Boris will do absolutely nothing for the Tories except show that they are tearing themselves apart.
And Keith said, having failed miserably to oust the man that's leading the Tory party by calling a confidence vote before the by-elections, the country has been saddled with a PM that, in my view, is not a true Tory. Whereas Susan says, why do the Conservatives persist in destroying themselves by squabbling and undermining the Prime Minister? You are playing into Labour's hands. They love all of this. Just do what is right. Conservative values, reduction in taxes, don't give in to strikes, show support and get on with the job. Stand united with the Prime Minister.
Like that one. And Tracy says here, I'll do the last one, we'll do some more a bit later. If the Prime Minister is ousted, I can assure you the electorate, i.e. myself, will never forgive the Tory backstabbers for it. They need to be warned and let the public decide.
Lots of views, keep them coming in.
Well, we're delighted to say that we're joined in the studio. I'm going to call you the wonderful Woodford.
The what? There's a ring to it.
Forget Kevin. Wonderful Woodford. So what have you been sort of looking at in the papers today?
There's a lovely little story. I mean, I drove in today and sat-nav's great, isn't it? I love technology, so sat-nav, so with sat-nav, you can choose what voice you want. You can have, like today I had Sylvester Stallone brought me in, make a left, make a right, which is great, because the technology, where does it go? That's what I think. So a lot of people have got Alexa or something like that at home, from Amazon. Where it's becoming completely crazy, isn't it? Because you can say to Alexa, order dog food, and Alexa will order dog food for you, or play Jack Savaretti or whatever. It'll do absolutely anything. But Amazon have taken that to the next stage, and what they've devised now is if they get literally a minute of audio, the voice of maybe a loved one, somebody who's deceased even, and you had a recording of their voice, 1 minute of that particular audio recording, and that becomes the voice on Alexa for you. So for me, for example, I've still got a recording of my mum, bless her heart, but I know what would happen, and here's the problem with it, right? If I had that installed in Alexa, and I said to Alexa, and it was my mum who was going to be answering this, if I said to her, I'm just popping to the shops while I'm out, keep the lights off, she'd say, well, make sure you've got clean undies on in case you get run over. No, where does it end? No, do you know what I mean? I don't know where it ends, because technology, my fear, Phil and Esther, is that do we get to a stage where technology completely ruins and rules our lives? That's what worries me.
Listen, when I get in the car, I don't want to have Esther nagging at me on the. I'm trying to get away from that. Phil. Why would I want even more?
I thought he was going to say, "I've got a minute of Esther's voice, and I'm going to have everything changed to make sure she's always there with me." But oh no, he didn't say that. Your story.
Yeah, so I was in the Daily Mail today, page 50 and 51 of the Daily Mail. I thought this was a cracker. Max Dickens planned to get married, and he panicked because he couldn't think of anyone to be his best man. And it was a realisation that triggered this mystery for him, and that is, why do so many men have so few friends? And he's written a book on it called Billy No Mates, How I Realised Men Have a Friendship Problem. And I thought to myself...
Well, you know, after what you just said there, Phil, to me, that's kind of one of the reasons, yeah.
But I was looking at this, and I thought this... I know it's for you, you've probably got thousands of friends, Kevin, but I was thinking about this. Esther has got so many friends, it's ridiculous. I mean, she can't keep up with them all, she's got that many. And I'm thinking... I don't actually have that many friends when I come to think about it, to be perfectly honest. Now, you might say...
That's why I partnered up with you, to make our social diary so much easier, just my mates.
Before you all write in, you would probably say that's nothing to do with you being a man, it's because you're you. That's what you're probably... but do you... I think there's something in this, Kevin. What do you think, that women have far more friends than men do?
I don't know. I don't know that I agree with that fully. I think it's down to us as individuals. I don't have a great load of friends. I have very special friends. Do you know what I mean? So, am I being selective? Perhaps. Do you know what I mean?
I wonder if there's another thing as well. You know, to socialise, girls frequently go out and, you know, go, I don't know, to a cafe, go to a bar, go out, and we go out as a group to talk in different kind of
After you've
settings.
spent an hour speaking to them on the phone.
But boys do like their hobbies, so it will be football, or it will be cricket, or it will be racing, or it will be... So is there something in that our form of socialising is our hobby, whereas you narrow things down to your hobby? I'm giving you an excuse to take here.
See, if I was a sexist, I'd just say that as blokes we're just that busy providing, but I'm not, so I wouldn't say that.
We better move on faster.
What was that? That busy providing. That busy providing for you women just sitting at home, loving it, Kevin.
Well, let's rescue him.
OK, well, actually, it's a great one here. I'm bringing in the special forces just for that comment. No, it was a cracking story here. It was in today's Times, and it was Dig Out HS2, activists pleads Swampy. So this is a sort of age-old rivalry between Swampy and a man called Peter Folding. And this is Britain's best-known environmental activist. He was under the ground and they brought in this ex-paratrooper 30 years ago to dig him out. Well, now you've got the same team not just doing that. So, you know, ex-paratroopers going in, digging out activists from underground tunnels. This is to save their lives, by the way. They've been under there for 48 days and they feel the oxygen might run out. But equally, the same special forces, this was also in a story, was removing squatters from a very expensive building in London. So you'll see them coming down off the roofs. People will say it's very sort of reminiscent of the SAS heroes ending the siege at the Iranian embassy back in the 1980s. But they were going in to protect the roof, to protect the balconies, protect the squatters didn't get into any harm as the bailiffs went in and brought them out. So I thought, how interesting, what people's jobs or hobbies lead them to do later in life. So these are all ex-AS, ex-paratroopers, and I've got a friend who is a mountain climber, not, as you can imagine, afraid of heights whatsoever, and he set up his company and he goes to the biggest, tallest buildings in the world to clean them, change glasses, you know, change them if they crack, if any of the glass cracks, and that's the sort of job. I just thought it was very interesting that we are using our ex-forces in this way.
See, I couldn't do either. I couldn't climb up and I couldn't go underground.
I'm the same.
I really couldn't. I really couldn't, you know. And finally, there's a great story about Marmite. Did you see that about Marmite? Marmite now apparently is...
I saw it.
It's huge, isn't it? I mean, and it does make me laugh because there's loads of chefs, and I do love them all, they're all good mates, coming up with these fantastic recipes, the best one being for Marmite ice cream. I'm going to give that a miss.
Yeah.
I really am.
Me too. Kevin, no one ever wants to give you a miss. Thank you very much indeed for joining us again this morning.
Now, research from the Institute of Customer Service has revealed that nearly half of our customer-facing staff have experienced hostility in the last year, ranging from verbal abuse to physical assaults.
The Service with Respect campaign, which has been running for 2 years, has now been listened to by the government, and they've amended the Police Crime Sentencing and Courts Act, which will make assaults on customer-facing staff an aggravated offence in sentencing rules.
Joining us now to talk about the campaign and the issue as a whole is the Chief Executive of the ICS, Joe Corson. So, how bad have things got for those frontline workers?
Well, good morning to you both and great to be with you. And as you said, we've been campaigning now for 2 years for this change. And what we've seen in the latest survey results is over almost 50% of people facing into customer service roles are experiencing some level of abuse. And what I find really interesting, Esther, it's not just in retail, it can be in contact centres, it can be in hospitality. And that level of abuse will be range from verbal abuse to actually physical abuse as well. So it's a really big issue for us.
Now, Joe, I know you've spent a lot of time at the Institute of Customer Service getting companies to take this issue much more seriously. And I think you've got lots of companies signed up to your Service with Respect campaign. I just wonder, what is it that you think companies and businesses and organisations should be doing to better protect their staff?
Absolutely, Philip. And we have got good support, over 200 organisations. But the sorts of things that we're asking for, the sorts of things that we really encourage organisations to do, is firstly have a zero tolerance policy towards abusive behaviour, but also to make sure that they report it and encourage their staff to report it when they're experiencing it, because not all staff do. So I think the first thing is to report it, have a zero tolerance, and also, train and develop their people to deal with it, to try and de-escalate issues before they perhaps get out of hand.
And of course, it's not just shop workers, is it? And it's not even just people who are physically in front of a customer. This is also something that happens a lot to people in call centres and people over the phones, isn't it, too?
Absolutely. It's across a whole range of our different industry sectors. And given, some of the challenges we're experiencing at the moment, we have seen this in contact centres, we've seen it with the guys that are digging up the roads, we've seen it in a whole host of different service-related roles. And 61% of our workforce are in some form of customer-related or customer-facing role. So that's a big impact across the whole of the UK and across the whole of the UK economy too.
Take these cases seriously when they're reported?
Sorry, Esther, do the police, did you say?
Yeah, and the CPS, do they take them seriously when they are reported?
Sorry, Esther. Yes, I think the issue for me is that we need to take it more seriously. And obviously the change in the sentencing amendment to the bill, I think will really help with that, because by making it an aggregated offence, then I think hopefully that becomes more of a deterrent, but also an opportunity to take that more seriously. If organisations report it, therefore the CPS taking that more seriously and the police picking that up. And there's incumbent on us all, as customers to behave a little bit better, but also for organisations to report and for the police to take this more seriously.
Joe Corson, Chief Executive of the Institute of Customer Service, thank you for joining us, and thank you for what you and your members are doing to tackle this scourge in the country. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Coming up after the break, we'll be discussing Glastonbury Festival with the former lead guitarist for Bon Jovi, Richie Sambora. So don't go anywhere.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere. We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
Hello, I'm Patrick Christie's.
And I'm Mercy Moroki.
Make sure that you join us Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. until midday, right here on GB News for To The Point.
We're not afraid to talk about the topics that matter to you or the big topics that always matter.
We cover absolutely everything, from the breaking political stories of the day to law and order, what's going on in the channel. We're not afraid to hold people to account.
We always make sure we include your views on our show.
Indeed, if you're thinking it, you can guarantee that we're saying it. So make sure you join the conversation with us, 10 a.m. until midday, Monday to Thursday for To The Point on GB News.
Welcome back. We've got some of your views here, Phil.
Richard says certainly the by-election results and the issue over Boris Johnson's leadership is definitely getting people going. So Richard says, just watch the so-called Tory rebels. I like to call them backstabbers and bad losers. If they do oust Boris, I would like to see Ben Wallace as leader. I hope GB News and its watchers and listeners can see this happening. Farage is right on this point. We need a full Brexit to move forward.
And Marilyn says here, I heard Norman Lamont on Any Questions last night. His opinion is that the Conservative Party should stop all this trying to get rid of Boris. He said, as one who's been in a similar crisis as the Chancellor of the Exchequer, the last thing we need at the moment is a change of leader. Thank you, Marilyn. So, the Glastonbury Festival is back this weekend to celebrate its 50th year after 2 years of COVID-related delays.
Fans descended onto the legendary Worthy Farm in Somerset this week, despite travel chaos and rail strikes, to witness the likes of Kendrick Lamar and Sir Paul McCartney perform some of their classic hits.
Well, talking of legendary, we are delighted to say that we're now joined by former lead guitarist and I'd say one of the best guitarists in the world, part of Bon Jovi, Richie Sambora. Thank you, to talk all things Glastonbury. But what I want to say, Richie, you've performed at Madison Square Garden, you've performed at the O2 Arena, the Hollywood Bowl, Wembley Stadium, and also Glastonbury. So what's the appeal of Glastonbury?
Well, just first of all, it's been running now, what, 50 years? And it's just basically it's a festival of peace. It's turned into a lovely event for families, you know. And over the years now, I'm sure it becomes we're going to go to Glastonbury every year. And it's fantastic, you know. And if you're a musician, we love to play live, you know. And interesting story is that I played Glastonbury one time because since 1988 I was doing stadiums with Bon Jovi all over the world, and we didn't have a chance to do it. And there was a day that I had off, and I got called by Dolly Parton, and she had done one of my songs on her album, and she said, "Would you come and play Glastonbury with me?" And it was a tremendous experience. Is it like 200,000 people there, and God knows how many people are going to watch on TV. It's very historical. You know,
now, Richie,
a lot of fun.
You just said there, I couldn't believe it, we've got a rock and roll legend, and what you're saying about Glastonbury is it's gone all family. Isn't that wonderful? What's this about? I'm expecting you to, be all guitar and sort of ladies, not sort of family
besides that,
picnics.
then you have the talent, like I'm honored to say that Paul McCartney is headlining this evening, I think, and he's my friend, and if I was going, I would love to see Billie Eilish and Robert Plant and Kendrick Lamar, obviously, and Herbie Hancock. I mean, it's an amazing array of artists, and it's just a wonderful show. And what's going on in the world today, obviously, with the uncertainty of war and pandemic and all of that, and inflation and things like that. This is a big relief. And I think that the 2 years that it hasn't been running, I think there's a large amount of anticipation. And I'm sure it's going to be an amazing couple of days.
And you're right there. Music does, sing to the soul. And after such, terrible things happening in the world, we absolutely do need that music. And I want to live in on a prayer. I think most of us are living on a prayer at the moment. And you sort of co-wrote this. How do you write a song like that?
Yes, I'm very proud of that. You know what? It is a story. And I think the reason that song was such a big song is that everybody has been in that place where, of uncertainty, trying to make it in this world. And that's basically what the song is about. I think everyone is living on a prayer at this moment. I think I really, me and my cohorts struck a nerve on that one, writing that song. It always makes people very, very happy.
Yeah, Richie, I mean, you co-wrote that with John Bon Jovi and Desmond Child, along with You Give Love a Bad Name. One thing I always ask, I like to ask people in your situation is, when you wrote those songs, did you know the moment you'd finished them that they were hit songs? Or did they surprise you?
Actually, those two that you mentioned came, at a time where we were touring for about 3 years, and we were kind of opening up for other bands and then playing our own theater shows and stuff like that on the days off. But then when we recorded Slippery When Wet, and those songs kind of just happened, and Wanted Dead or Alive. But Prayer especially, it became everybody's anthem, because we've all been there. Or, maybe, you're not having the best time, but you're working hard together, and there's a joy in that. And it was depicted through music, and I think I've played that song now about 15,000 times, and every time... the thing that makes it great, if you ask me, like, okay, do I come back to my hotel room and I play that particular song? I would say no. The thing that makes it important is the interaction of the audience and the band together. And I think that's, rock and roll is a contact sport. You know what I mean? And you get a lot of contact at Glastonbury. I know that when Dolly called me up to play, it was just fantastic. It was the first time I actually was there. I've obviously watched it many, many times, but it was awesome.
And a contact sport, and that's a big contact sport when there's 200,000 people singing your words back to you.
You have millions of people watching on TV, And now with the advent of social media and everything like that, these things live on forever. And that's a beautiful thing. And you know what else? It's peaceful. It's a peaceful gathering of a lot of people. And I think that it's very, very welcome right now in what's going on with the world, obviously.
But
Music is a healer. Music is a healer.
I'll never get to sing, luckily, thankfully, in front of 200,000 people. But are you ever nervous? I mean, what are you thinking? Is it just adoration and love, or are you nervous, or do you worry about the gig? What do you think?
I think when you have good songs that connect with people, and I think that's one of the fortes of, what Bon Jovi did, and what I try to do as a solo artist also, is basically connect with your audience about what you're feeling and what you've been through in your life. And we live in the human condition together. And we have more in common than not, So Glastonbury is a definite, it goes to show you.
And, I don't know if it was a surprise when you performed with Dolly Parton, probably a surprise maybe for everybody in the audience. Have you got any surprise performances you want to tell us about that we can break the news to the world about?
Well, you know what? It's interesting because, I like to play with everyone. And everyone calls me up to play, whether it's, Paul or Nile Rodgers or Elton John, or the list goes on, and Eric Clapton, Buddy Guy, or it's a joyous experience to be able to share that. And I've been lucky enough and fortunate enough to have the honor to play with the likes of those people. And
also one of my favourite women, Cher. You've performed and dated Cher.
We lived together for 2 years, and I wrote a couple of hits for her too, and we played together all the time. That was a great experience too. She's a great lady.
Richie Sambora, thank you so much for joining us this morning. You are a true legend in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame.
Thank you so much, man.
And I also know that
it's a pleasure to join you. Thanks
you
for
do a
having
lot
me.
of charity fundraising as well, I know, behind the scenes. So thank you for all that you do in that regard as well. Thank you very much.
Oh, man, thank you guys.
Oh, real pleasure. See, true rock legend, and what an amazingly lovely man.
Absolutely.
Now, still to come on the show, we're looking over to the United States again, where the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade. But first, here's our latest headlines with Ray.
It's 11:32. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. The Prime Minister insists voters want to hear less about what he's calling things he stuffed up as he defended his leadership after a double by-election defeat. Speaking from the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting in Rwanda this morning, Boris Johnson said it's part of his job to face criticism as leader.
I have to, listen to all sorts of criticism. That's part of my job as leader. When things are tough, of course, people are going to rightly going to direct their frustration, their irritation at government and at me. I'm the leader of the government. I think to be absolutely clear, in the last few months, people in Tiverton, people in Wakefield just heard far too much about stuff they didn't want to be hearing about, and not enough about what we want to do to take the country forward.
The RMT union is refusing to rule out further strike action this year as a third day of walkouts disrupts transport across the country. Only a fifth of train services are running today as thousands of rail workers protest over jobs, pay and conditions. 2 people have been killed in a shooting at a nightclub in Norway's capital. 14 people were also seriously injured in the incident, which police are treating as an act of terrorism. Officers say one suspect, a 42-year-old Norwegian citizen of Iranian origin, is in custody. The shooting took place just hours before Oslo was due to hold its annual Pride Parade. That's now been cancelled. Sir Paul McCartney will make history later when he becomes Glastonbury's oldest solo headliner. The former Beatle will take to the stage exactly 1 week after celebrating his 80th birthday. His set is expected to attract an especially large crowd with hits from throughout his career. On TV, online and on DAB+ radio, this is GB News. Now let's get back to Esther and Philip in just a moment.
We are GB News.
We're right across this great nation.
On TV, on radio, on digital.
Absolutely everywhere.
We don't talk down to you.
We embrace all voices.
With honest and civilised conversation.
We're not part of the establishment.
We're one of you.
And we're only getting started.
Join us on GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here.
You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, the comedy panel show that's just like the news, in that the left fights the right and it doesn't really seem to matter who wins. We cover the big stories. It was in fact a troop of baboons and not angry vegans.
I like that.
And the really important stories.
Fat naked cow gets stuck in swimming pool.
It's a headline in a lot of local newspapers. Yeah.
We're on the same team, Nick. Yeah, but I'm just helping you.
Join us for Ministry of Offence, Saturday nights, 8 o'clock on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
welcome back. Plenty of you have been getting in touch.
OK, I'll go first. I've got Annette says, just saw a Labour minister in GB News, then that was John Healey, saying the public want Boris to go. Well, I'm a member of the public and I don't want him to go. I want him to get on with making Britain great again. And I know he can do that. I wish the attack dogs would back off. Think of all the support that he gave to them, with furlough money for at least for the last 2 years. Digby Jones was spot on with everything he said. That was from Annette.
And Blue says, I don't understand why so many people are against the strikes. If the richest shared the wealth more evenly, there wouldn't be a need for strikes and everyone would have a pay rise without inflation. So thank you for your views. Now, celebrity tattoo artist Kat Von D is being sued by a photographer in the US over the use of a famous photograph of jazz legend Miles Davis.
It is believed to be the first lawsuit over whether an image's copyright protection extends to tattoos, raising questions about artistic freedom and body autonomy against photographers' rights to their own creations.
Well, to dig deeper into the story, we're delighted to say we're joined by a lawyer, broadcaster and friend of the show, Andrew Eborn. Andrew, this is a novel one, isn't it?
Oh, it's brilliant. I was at Green Day yesterday. I can tell you that lots of ink had been spilt over all of the audience. It's absolutely brilliant. 40% of millennials have tattoos. 20% of all adults in the UK apparently have tattoos.
Have you got a tattoo?
I'll show you later. But the civil case is extraordinary. People forget about copyright. Now, what copyright is an exclusive right to your artistic work. So if you have a photograph or you have a picture or a tattoo, you own the rights in what you've created. Now, this particular photographer, Jeff Sedlick is his name, created this iconic photograph of Miles Davis. Kat Von D, who I know you know well, she's got 8.3 million followers on Instagram. I realise that. They're brilliant ones. She basically copied the photograph on one of her colleagues. Didn't charge anything, but she's made a lot of publicity as a result of it. What he's arguing as the exclusive copyright owner is that he can control when people copyright or when people copy his work. So he's suing her for that. And he's suing her for damages. He's suing her to deliver up all the social media. But also he could, interestingly, get the tattoo removed. Now, that would be fascinating. So anybody who's got a tattoo, and there's lots of people out there, which is copying somebody else's work, you've got a big, big problem on your hands if you don't have the rights properly cleared.
This has never happened before, isn't it, really?
Well, I tell you, it has happened before. Do you remember the movie The Hangover? Hangover 2 with Mike Tyson. It was in that. And what happened in that, one of the tattoo artists, it was the other way around this time, because tattoo artists own copyright in what they create. And they did the iconic tattoo for Mike Tyson. That was copied on Stu. I don't know how much you know The Hangover 2, but Stu is one of the central characters. In a drunken fit, he had a Mike Tyson's tattoo put on him. And the tattoo artist, who was Victor Whitmill, sued Warner Brothers, threatening to pull the movie and get an injunction. They settled out of court for probably what was zillions as a result of it. So there is copyright in tattoos. Make sure you get those cleared. And if you do have artistic works, make sure that that's cleared from tattoo artists as well.
The only thing I would say, obviously, if they're wonderful artists, then it might be a fantastic tattoo that looks identical to the picture that you sent them. But I have seen too many tattoos where, trust me, you wouldn't know whose original photo it was, and so they probably wouldn't be suing for it.
So it's a good point. And the other thing is when people have a loved one who they no longer are in love with, and you have to change the name in an extraordinary way. But yes, it's an essential point to look at. Make sure you get the rights right. Don't copy somebody else's work, because that could get you into all sorts of problems.
You don't want to be removing that tattoo unnecessarily. Andrew Eborn, as ever, bringing us the latest news from around the world, and that's definitely one to watch.
That's all, folks.
That's a bad one. We've got Aidan McGee a bit later. He'll be vying for bad joke supremacy with you.
Now, abortion clinics in some US states have begun closing after a Supreme Court ruling yesterday removed American women's constitutional right to an abortion.
Around half of US states are expected to introduce new restrictions or bans after the highest court in the land overturned its 50-year-old Roe versus Wade decision.
Protests against the decision are underway, not only in America, but also in the UK. And US President Joe Biden has described the ruling as a tragic error.
Well, joining us now to discuss the decision is author and political commentator Ella Whelan. So, were you shocked with this ruling?
No, depressed by it, but not shocked. I think most people who have been following the saga in the Supreme Court, probably had an inkling that this was going to happen, not least because within the last few years, the appointments to the Supreme Court have been made by Republican presidents who have a particular bugbear against abortion rights, or have used, Trump campaigned, having been himself previously sort of on the fence or actually pro-choice, switched to a pro-life position for reasons I suppose we can speculate about. And the appointment of Justice Amy Coney Barrett, for example, and Brett Kavanaugh probably signaled to most people that Roe versus Wade was in danger. And then we had the Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization case, which was the real trigger for pushing Roe to the limit. And that was, in the end, that is the camel that's the straw that's broken the camel's back. But it's important to note that ever since it's the original ruling in the 70s, there have been case after case, attack after attack on Roe. And so I think for most of us who are, have been following this, it doesn't come as a surprise.
Ella, what the supporters of this are saying is that, well, look, this is something, this is about democracy. This is a decision that shouldn't be made by unelected judges in a court. This is something that should be decided democratically by each state. And so what do you say to that? They're painting this as a triumph for democracy.
There is an interesting and important discussion to be had about the way in which American politics works, much like we could have discussions about the House of Lords or the monarchy in the UK. I mean, the setup of the Supreme Court and the way in which, particularly in America, you have this kind of means of lawfare where much of political debate happens in the courts rather than happening at the election, at the ballot box. That's a problem. But please, let's get real here. This was not a row about democracy, and this was not an admission from the Supreme Court of saying, oh, well, we just really shouldn't have this power. We're handing it back to the man and woman at the ballot box. That's nonsense. It's not what it was about. This was a concerted effort by campaigners and the people who brought the Dobbs case and those who within the Supreme Court who have had it in for abortion rights for quite some time, to see their opportunity to overturn Roe. I think you really can't underestimate the growth of the kind of active growth of pro-life sentiment in America. It's always been a nation that's been divided. Let's not underestimate that. It's always been the case that there's been a strong anti-choice movement.
Yeah. I was looking at the abortion figures in the USA in 2020. It's nearly 1,930,000. So my concern is, what is going to happen to all of those women who were and have been seeking abortions?
Well, it's an incredible state of affairs that one of the most developed nations in the world now has one of the most, potentially some of the most backward abortion laws in the world. Immediately after Roe fell from the Supreme Court ruling, states across America introduced, literally instantly had what they called trigger laws, institute laws that, for example, some of them almost ban abortion outright. They had things like heartbeat bills, which means that abortion can't be allowed after, as early as 6 weeks. Women will have to travel. I mean, and if you think about how extensively large America is, the amount of finances you'll need and the time you'll need off work or whatever to be able to travel from, say, for example, Little Rock, Arkansas to California in order to get an abortion is going to be insurmountable for many women. I mean, the offshoot of this is that lots of women will have to try and access particularly early abortion pills illegally. That is putting women in danger of criminalisation.
A whole load. Ella, this brings in other issues as well, doesn't it? Because now companies are saying they will give their staff support or, time to travel if they have an abortion. So this is really becoming very complicated now. Like you said, it's whether people say it's about democracy, whether people say it's about human rights. And now you've got businesses assisting and supporting their staff should they wish to choose an abortion. It's got very complicated now in America, more so than I think it could ever get in the UK.
Well, it's a really interesting point, because one of the things that's little sort of known or ignored about the Roe ruling was that, yes, it was about providing, allowing access to abortion for women, without reason in the first trimester and that in the first 3 months, and then moving forward with some restrictions. But actually, if you look at the 1973 judgment, it basically said this right of privacy enshrined in the Constitution about privacy is broad enough to encompass a woman's decision whether or not to terminate her pregnancy. So it was actually about saying something quite fundamental that many Americans hold very dear: the freedom to make private decisions about yourself and your body and your future away from the eyes of the state. And now, if you have women having to rely on disclosing their most intimate details about their life, their pregnancy, whether or not they want to have a baby or whether they want to terminate a pregnancy.
Ella Whelan, all excellent points that you're raising there, and we're going to have to end our interview there. But thank you very much indeed for joining us this morning for that really important decision that has just happened, probably setting America back at least 50 years. Thank you very much indeed.
I guess one of the issues is whether there's going to be a rise in backstreet abortion clinics, isn't there? When people who can't travel out to Texas or something.
And that's why I asked that. 930,000 women in 2020 had an abortion in America. Wow. So, look, something completely different now. It's time to look at the week's showbiz and sports news. And as always, we're joined in the studio by our regular showbiz correspondent, Hayley Palmer, and sports broadcaster Aidan McGee. So we'll start with showbiz.
Yes. Brilliant. So Rupert Murdoch and Jerry Hall, they are getting a divorce. He is 91, she is 65. They were together 6 years. I don't know what you guys think about this, but when they first got together, I was like, is this going to work? I mean, he is worth $14 billion. What is going to happen to his fortune? That is the big question we're asking.
Prenuptial agreement, do you think?
We don't know. I've tried to investigate this.
They're not worth that much, are they? I've looked into them.
Oh, OK.
What, prenuptial agreement or murder? Well, I have to say, I was going back those however many 6 years, I was more shocked that they were getting together than I am now shocked that they're getting divorced.
Married 4 times. Like, if someone's got married 4 times, I wouldn't be interested.
Yeah, but when he's 91, you might think he might have slowed down. He might not be rocking off to his next young bird,
Well, he might be getting married again then, before he's 100.
Exactly. Didn't she attacked one of his an assailant in the Leveson inquiry? Did she not? Was that right?
No, that was his wife before.
Oh right, okay.
That was the wife before.
That was Wendy Deng. I was.
He was there.
I was in there. He was getting attacked by somebody with a custard pie.
Right.
And Wendy Deng I got covered in it looked like a custard pie. It was actually shaving foam, as it turned out. It wasn't.
Oh right.
I got splattered. But I wouldn't mess with Wendy Deng.
No.
She was like something from Charlie's Angels, and there she was defending her husband to the hilt there and stopping the custard pies. So I think this is going to be interesting. I've been reading about it. I knew you were talking about it today, Hayley. I've been reading about it, and all the friends are saying, no, they loved each other. We're all very shocked. We can't believe it's come to an end. But once he's made up his mind, and it's over. But we're going to be finding out more, I believe, next week, because there is a big family wedding, a Murdoch family wedding, and they say if she's there, obviously they might be getting back together, might not be getting divorced, but if she is not there, if Jerry Hall is not there at this family wedding, it's over. So as one wedding...
Well, they hadn't been spotted together since October last year, and he had his annual serpentine ball last week and she wasn't there. And she's a social butterfly, so she's always at these things. So the fact she wasn't there, everyone kind of thought, what is going on?
Problem.
So, yeah.
The story I was interested in was about Peter Andre buying his son, 17-year-old son, a £25,000 new car on his birthday. I hope my children aren't watching, because they're not going to get anything like that. And it was an interesting one, because part of me thinks, well, it's his money, and if he can afford it, and then when he wants to do that, what's it got to do with anybody else? But then I thought, should you be doing that?
Yeah, because it had a personalised number plate and everything. And I thought, no, I had a little Ford KA when I started out, but I was happy with that.
Well, I think you got 2 years free insurance back then. With Ford KAs. I'm being serious. I think you did.
OK, yeah. Well, it's a long time ago, Aidan, back in the day. But no, I think it makes you not appreciate it. You just think, wow, this is my life. And it's, I think when you have to work for your money and work to get a really nice car and start off with a basic car and then work your way up, then you appreciate it more. But Peter Andre's saying it was second-hand.
Well, if he says, well, look, what I'd sooner make sure that he's safe and secure. I'm not getting I don't know, an old Bangor or something. I'm getting him something that, he's safe and it's his money. And now that I know he's got a personalised reg, that could be worth more than the car it might. So he's going to get his money back on that. But look, it's his money. He can spend it any way he wants.
Aidan, Wimbledon next week.
Yeah.
And the thing that I was most intrigued about Wimbledon next week wasn't actually the sport bit. It was that they'd ended their association with Robinsons after 86 years, one of the longest commercial partnerships in sport.
Well, I'm told that the discussions were cordial.
Here he goes.
Oh, my God.
That was the joke. That was the joke. Sorry. I thought you were going to take it off me then. Yeah, exactly. Apparently, Wimbledon are quite difficult to deal with in terms of commercial arrangements. They're very selective over their rights. So I think the fact that the suggestion is that Robinsons actually wanted to promote Gatorade, which is a drink that's very high in sugar, and Wimbledon believed it was now against their principles. But it's more Robinsons who pulled away because, yes, there's lots of... they're owned by Unilever, but lots of different brands they wanted to promote. But that was one they really wanted to go for this time. It didn't chime with what Wimbledon wanted to do. They haven't ruled out getting back together in future, but 86 years, that's an awful long time, isn't it?
Sad, isn't it? I think it's really sad, that.
Yes, it was like the barley water range,
Yeah,
wasn't it?
exactly.
I love that.
Apparently it's barley crystals in the original.
Yeah, I used to get so excited when I used to get that cordial.
Who's going to win Wimbledon?
Listen, I don't know who's going to win it. I can't say who's going to win it because you always get outliers, but Andy Murray, I think, has been watching the draw here, and he's been watching, not so much the draw was only made at the weekend, a couple of days ago, but earlier in the year, he would have looked at Novak Djokovic's start and all the turmoil he had with getting into Australia. Nadal, predictably, is injured. He's got a foot problem. Federer's not competing until... He's not going to be back from a back injury or knee injury, rather, until September. Medvedev is not going to play because he's from Russia. So the field has opened out a little bit. He's got a very kind draw in the first round against James Duckworth, not the guy, nothing to do with anyone who's in Coronation Street. And... So he's got a decent start. Before you know it, it could be in the quarterfinals.
And just quickly on Emma Raducanu here, front page of the Mail and various other pages. Not so much about her tennis, more about getting a place to Cambridge. So what is she going to give sport up now and go down the educational path?
Well, look, it's always there. I'm sure it's there later in her career. It was her grandmother who let it slip, by the way. But she went to Newstead Woods in Orpington, a really good school that I know. And so I'm not surprised that she's been able to get to Cambridge through there. But she's got so much more to achieve in her tennis career. She's got a side injury at the moment, so she's got to try and get past that. But her draw is... she's a 10th seed, but her draw is very, very difficult. She's playing against, in the first round, against, what's her name? Should we find her? Van Uvetank. I've not heard of her, but she's 46th in the world. She's won 2 grass court events this year. So yeah, she's going to be a tough draw in the first round, no question about that.
Well, thank you very much indeed. We've had a fabulous show. Hayley, Aidan, thank you very much indeed.
I wanted to just mention, though, I just want to mention that the big horse racing news is the split between former champion trainer John Gosden and Frankie Dettori, which is, they've been together for years, and Frankie Dettori is the best-known person in racing.
Yeah,
and he's...
Great, well, you've mentioned that now. Yeah. Anyway, that's all from us. Going out on the high after that little story.
We'll talk after.
Yeah, we'll talk after that. But we'll be back next Saturday at 10 a.m. But stay tuned to GB News, as it's not Alistair Stewart and friends next, but it's Angela Rippon stepping in for him. So stay tuned.
Good morning, I'm Helen Roberts with your weather update, and this weekend is looking rather changeable, certainly in comparison with some recent days over the past week or so, and it's all thanks to this area of low pressure, very slow moving, and it's with us right the way through the course of this weekend. Initially introducing this cold front, which will actually bring some better nights if you've been struggling to sleep with the humidity over recent nights, feeling a little bit cooler and fresher than it has done. So for Saturday, we start on quite a bright note, but quickly these rash of showers developing, particularly across western parts of the country. Some of those will be heavy, maybe even the odd rumble of thunder. The best chance of seeing drier and brighter weather throughout the day is across East Anglia and the southeast of England. And this is also where we'll tend to get the higher temperatures into the low 20s. So feeling quite pleasant in the sunshine. But it is looking changeable, and there's yet more cloud and rain swinging in from the west through the course of tonight and into the start of Sunday. This will be a band of slightly more persistent rain as we head into the early hours of Sunday morning. As I mentioned, feeling a little bit fresher than it has done over some recent nights, but still not cool by any stretch. So we start Sunday again with some bright spells, particularly across the eastern side of the UK, but quite a lot of cloud already piling up across western areas and further showers or perhaps longer spells of rain. And again, they could be heavy and possibly thundery at times. Still, the best chance of drier and brighter conditions is across the southeast corner of the UK, and again temperatures here just about climbing into the low 20s given that sunshine. And there's really no significant change as we head into the early part of next week, certainly staying on the changeable side with further showers which will be heavy at times